Hello, everyone. This is JD Calderon, and this is Indie Comics Explained. And tonight, I have another great guest, Michael Oden. And before I go on to him, let me just tell you guys, thank you so much for being here. Please like, please subscribe, please let other comic-friendly people know that we're here and we're bringing independence to the fore. And that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to bring more independence forward and make them prosper. So without further ado, here's Michael Oden.
What's up, guys? How's it going? I'm Michael Oden. I'm the creator and writer of Elysian Fields. We've had a little bit of a splash on the internet, so you might have seen videos with our title going around on things like Jimmy Reyes and a whole bunch of other places. We started our campaign a few months ago. We wrapped it up here around a week ago on Indiegogo, and our Indemand to the store is still open. We plan on keeping that open throughout the summer until we launch the next campaign for the next book. But yeah, that's me.
All right. So, Michael, let's jump right into it. So, yeah. Elysian Fields, is this like your first comics project that you've ever done, or are there others that you've done before this?
It is. So from a creative standpoint, this is my launch into the industry. For a long time I have written on the side. I've done. I got started in the industry writing for Movie Pilot, doing reviews and stuff like that. That's kind of where I got started, and then I was on track to be one of their verified creators, and we had a bit of a difference on what we were looking to do. And so I moved on. I made my own blogs, and then I got picked up for Heroic Hollywood, and a similar thing happened with me and them, where like I worked for them for like 2 weeks and was like, this isn't a good fit. And then went back to writing my blogs again, and then I got picked up by Up Your Geek recently, and they're fantastic. Great platform with a lot of my shared ethics as far as industry-related journalism is concerned. But I mean, as much as I've loved reviewing and doing this stuff for the industry, my heart's always been in the creative end, and I've always wanted to kind of get in there. And after a long time of hitting walls or coming close and just not quite getting there, I was like, "Fuck it, I'll make my own book." And so that's where we are here. I had this concept that had kind of been bouncing around in my head since high school. Frankly, even earlier than that. But been bouncing this idea around, reworked it around a few times, and finally just sat down and did something with it. And it turned out to be pretty damn good, if you ask me. Not to toot my own horn, but really awesome to see this thing come to life. And, we've been sending out advanced copies to a few different reviewers, and we've heard back from a few of them, and the response has been very positive so far. So we're really excited to keep this momentum going and get you guys your next book, and hopefully continue that standard that we established right off the bat here with our 0 issue.
Cool. All right, so let's peel it back a little bit. So it's pretty much a question I ask everybody. So what was your start? Where did you first what was that thing that you discovered early on? Because obviously this is something that you've been driven since you were young, right? What was that first book? It could have been a comic book, could have been a video game, movie, anything. Could have been a novel.
Actually, that is it. So it's a difficult question, and it's the easiest question,
right? Because
when it comes down to this book and everything, it all starts from one singular thing, and that was growing up. My dad was SF. My dad was Special Forces, and so he would be deployed months at a time, and I wouldn't see him. And so when he'd come home, my bedtime, my favorite bedtime story from Marie was I had this beautifully illustrated version of the Iliad and the Odyssey. And this sparked my love of mythology, and this is what drove me in the direction of writing Elysian Fields and choosing this topic. Was because, growing up, I was all into mythology. I was doing all this research and everything like that. And I surrounded myself with like-minded people who liked the same things, and we get into little debates on who do we think would win in a fight between this mythic hero and this mythic hero. and we'd get into arguments about it all the time. And so that's where a lot of the stuff for Elysian Fields comes from. But as far as comics, I was fortunate enough to grow up in the late 90s, and I had two older brothers that had me watching stuff like, X-Men, the animated series, Spider-Man, the animated series. I was, they weren't as avid collectors as I am, but like they had comics and stuff. So I'd be sneaking into their room, going into their comic collections and reading stuff that probably shouldn't have been at the age of like 10, such as like Spawn, but like reading like Spawn, Maximum Carnage, stuff like that, and getting really into the comic book side of things.
No, just to ask you, didn't get any Faust in it, did you?
No.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That would have been a real page turner for you at that age.
I do remember finding when I was like in middle school, I found a Jack the Ripper comic that I read and I really enjoyed, and that got me in a shit ton of trouble because I bought it at school once. It was not the brightest decision I've ever made. But I've always had this big love of comics and what have you, and that was spurred from my brothers, and then I had the love of mythology spread by my dad. And in all honesty, they're literally like two sides of the same coin. It's like, what are comics? They're a modern mythology. Like these heroes represent the things that we as a society and culture hold dear as values and what have you. Like that's what the original superheroes are supposed to be, this almost modern pantheon. And so like these two concepts go hand in hand as these stories that can help inspire the best of us. Alexander the Great went and conquered the known world with a copy of the Iliad under his pillow. And, you've got people that go out and do all these crazy things, create, invent, do everything like that. And what's the inspiration? The inspiration are things like Superman, inspiration are things like Batman, having a computer that can that can use like cell phones to scan environments and what have you. We have shit like that now. I guarantee you there was some guy reading a Batman comic being like, I'm gonna fucking do that one day. I'm gonna make that happen. That's so cool. Because at the end of the day, that's what these characters do, is they inspire. And that's always been the point of heroes. It's always been the point of stories, that it allows us to look up at the sky and see the stars, and all of a sudden they're more than just gas balls thousands of miles away. They're tangible concepts that we can reach for. And that's what these books do.
Gotcha. Now, obviously growing up, now at what stage did you start writing? Did you start really young? Did you start a little bit later? Did you go to school and maybe take a course and then say, okay, I might want to do this?
I have, and I don't want to come off as one of those pretentious people, but like ever since I was little, I had a reputation of telling good stories. Writing was something that I got really into in high school. I had a few teachers that helped foster my love of writing and creativity. Growing up, I drew a lot, and I still draw as like a hobby, but like there came a point where I realized, like, as fun as I have with this, and I'm not the worst guy on the face of the planet, but I'm nowhere near professional. And I was like, if I do want to get into this industry, I would literally, like, I already have, I think, what it takes to be on the writing side. I did not have what it takes to be on the drawing, and that would be like a solid 6-year investment of time, and I didn't want to wait that long. Right. But as I said, I've always I had that love of telling a good story, and writing came to me pretty easily once I started really getting into it, and which was easier said than done, because I have ADD, ADHD, and so growing up, I had a lot of difficulties with things like writing and talking, so it was this thing that I had to overcome. But once I got into it, once I got comfortable with it, I just had a blast. Like writing was this thing that I could do to escape.
Cool. Now, so let's get into a little bit like construction. Like when you actually write a script, do you like, okay, there's an ongoing debate. You're a pantser or you're what was it they call a plotter, right? So do you write by the seat of your pants, right, or do you sit down and you like construct?
I have tried being a pantser. It doesn't work for me at all. Like I know people that can do it and that can do it very well, but for me, I'm a big picture kind of guy. I like to get everything kind of planned out as to where I want to go with things generally. And then if I'm writing something and I come up with a better idea, then I apply it and adjust the plan as accordingly. I honestly feel that one of the biggest things that a writer should try and do is right off the bat establish how you want your story to begin and how you want it to end. You can always change the ending if you come up with something better. But to know what your ultimate end game is allows for you to really create the stuff you need to make that ending impactful. You know, if like I won't obviously say what I have planned for Elysian Fields.
Right. No, don't ruin it.
Knowing where I am going to go with this allows me to really delve into stuff that I want to focus on with these characters. It allows me to understand, why I'm writing Achilles this way. What are his motivations? What are the things that carry him through the story? What are his payoffs going to be? Why does Hercules do what he's going to do? Why does Theseus? Having these things plotted out allows for me to, while I am writing, keep those things in mind and really craft the best story that I can that really showcases these characters for who they are.
Now, let me ask you a question that I don't think I've asked anyone yet. Now, before, you obviously wrote a script.
Yeah.
Now, how long from the point you wrote that script did you present it to someone, not even the artist, but just someone else? It could have just been a first reader, editor, trusted friend,
So writing my first script, my script was a very difficult process because I essentially taught myself while I was writing. I had recently bought a copy of Marv Wolfman's Man and Superman. It was like the special edition hardcover of the book. And I ended up finding out that it came with a copy of his first draft of script of his first 2 issues. And it was funny because at the time I had been really frustrating trying to find online classes on how to do a script and what have you, and everything that I had found, it was like, well, here's what a protagonist is and here's what an antagonist is. I'm like, I'm not looking for a writing 101. I'm looking for how to format a script, you doofuses. And so it was this whole thing where I spent probably around 3 months writing this script. And I think the first person I actually had look at anything was while I was writing the script, because I wanted to make sure that what I was putting out there was going to be able to be absorbed by an artist. And if they could read it and understand what I was trying to say and get it down properly. And so I had sent out the first person that I had to look at it was a buddy of mine named Jacob Hirsch, who initially I was hoping that would do the art. But it just came to a point where he was like, look, I'm not a comic artist. This is really cool. And I'd be totally down for it, but I'm not a comic artist. This isn't. This is well out of my comfort zone, and I don't feel like I'd deliver on the product, which is fine. Really good dude, fantastic artist, very different than the style that we ended up going with. But he was the first person I showed the script because I wanted to get an artist's perspective. I wanted them to look at it, and I wanted to get feedback and understand where I might be going wrong, if there were anything I could do to improve what I was putting down there so that an artist would have a clear idea of what I was trying to say, what I was trying to convey. And but then once I finished it, I would say there was probably around 3-4 weeks where of me like looking over it and everything like that, and trying to do as many like grammatical edits and what have you, before I got a little test audience together of people that like I had like 3 people I knew really well, 3 people that I was like acquaintances with, and then like I had both of my brothers look at it, because both of them are huge writers and what have you. Like my brother Delk's a middle school English teacher, and my brother Gary has a master's in a whole bunch of stuff. So I sent it to them just to be like, just like make sure that I'm not coming off as an asshole here. So like, so I sent it to them, and then I sent it to the like that little focus group. And because I wanted to be like, okay, so now I have something. Let's see how people like it.
Right.
And then when I started getting feedback and people were like, you know, oh, I really like this, I really like that. It became the whole thing of, well, now I got to find an artist. And the big thing, I was very picky about who I was going to go with. I looked at like around 5 or 6 different freelancers online before I chose Marcelo. Even though I lucked out, Marcelo was literally like the second ad that I saw, and I had an idea that was who I wanted to go with. But I went through a lot of people, evaluated based off of price, quality of work, et cetera, because I paid for this whole project out of pocket.
Right. I know how that feels.
Yeah. And so once I had you know, kind of figured that out, it was a very important thing for me, because one of the only, I wouldn't say negative criticisms, but one of the only criticisms I did get about that script was a buddy of mine was like, look, man, like this is really cool, but if your artist does not pull off this artwork, your book's going to suck. Like,
yes.
like there are some people where like the writing is so strong that it doesn't matter. But like there's not, like in my initial draft, there wasn't a super heavy amount of dialogue, because one of the big criticisms that I've seen, and I agree with, in the mainstream of comics right now, is you'll have people fighting and you'll be giving them like 6 freaking dialogue balloons. And it's just like, it's one thing when it's someone like Spider-Man, and Spider-Man is a notorious shit talker, and he uses that to distract his opponents. When every single person is giving like 6 bubble soliloquies while they're punching people, it's like, no, that's not how that works. No. And so I was like, the Zero issue has a lot of action in it. You know, right from the get-go, you start off at the last battle that Achilles is at in Troy. So like I wanted very much for the scenes to be driven by dynamic action rather than dialogue. And so like my buddy was like, this is really cool, and your layouts sound really awesome, but if your artist is not able to deliver on this, you're gonna eat dirt. Like this book is not gonna perform. And luckily, like we found Marcelo and I have worked phenomenally together, and it's honestly feels like, you know, fate linking us up, because he'd never had a published book before. He'd done like a whole bunch of concept work for books, a whole bunch of other stuff like that, small time work, but had never had his own book. And so we came together, and it because you know he barely speaks a lick of English. Right. He's from Brazil, so he translates everything that I typed and send to him into Portuguese, and then works off of that. And to see how great of a job he's done, it's fantastic.
Now, if you don't mind me asking, where did you find him?
Dude, I can't even remember the site. I literally like it. I wish I could like it. I literally looked up freelance artists on Google and like it clicked one of the top 3 links, and then I scrolled down and I opened the first 3 profiles, and his just so happened to be the second one. Gotcha. And I was looking through it, and he had some page work that he had done of like a God of War inspired thing, and it looked awesome. And I was just like, this guy's going to be a heavy contender. And then, I narrowed it down to him and 2 other artists, and I talked to the other artists, and they were way out of my price range. And then I talked to him, and like, thank goodness for the USD Brazilian exchange rate, because it was super affordable on my end, but still gave him a great amount to work with and on his. And it was fantastic. And like the moment that I got my his sketch of Achilles, when I said to him, like, this is what I want, this is what this character needs to be, XYZ. He sent me that sketch within like a day or so, and I was like, "You're hired. We're doing a book."
No, that works. That works. Yeah, because I usually find most of my artists on DeviantArt. That's usually where I go.
DeviantArt is really solid. The big problem that I had, because I tried for a long time to get a hold of people on DeviantArt, and what would happen was the artists that I really like, I'd reach out to, and I'd either hear nothing back from, or they were like tied up with stuff.
Right.
And there's a lot of really good talent on DeviantArt. I think the other big problem is that there are a lot of people that post up really great artwork that's not theirs.
Yeah, that could be an issue. Yeah, that could definitely be an issue. Yeah.
And so, like, every now and again, you'd run into something like that, and I'd be like, "Oh, your art looks great." It's like, actually, I just really liked that piece, and I wanted it on my profile. And I went, "You're not helping me."
No.
But there is a lot of great talent up there. I like it. Like, that is something that I do hope to do in the future. Is get like. I love working with Marcelo, and Marcelo is going to be the exclusive artist on Elysian Fields. He's doing all the interior and everything, and every single main cover will be done by him. Cool. But I do hope for when the brand, like if Nine Realms takes off and we do a good job with it, to bring in more talent. And like that's another big thing that we're doing, even in our next book, is we're going to a variant cover done by an aspiring artist that's like he's a kid coming up and wants to be in the industry. He's got a lot of talent, and so he's going to be doing a variant cover, and a portion of our profits off of that are going to be donated to him to invest into his career.
Cool. That's cool. So when you wrote your script, did you write like a full tight script like DC? Because there's 2 types. I mean, you probably know. This is the DC style, or what's famously, historically known as DC style, full script.
Yeah, that's
panel one. Oh, okay, so you didn't even bother with Marvel. Okay.
Well, like the whole, you have to realize the big thing. Like when I wrote my script, I literally was looking at Marv Wolfman's script from Man and Superman, where it was like panel 1, establishing shot. POV from this side, we got these characters doing these things, and then dialogue, and so that's how I modeled my script, because like again, as I said, I was trying very, very hard to find somebody to like it that would help, like find something to help me format a script online, and literally everything that I got was worthless. I got like 2 things that really helped me as far as like directing a panel was concerned. Like this is what this shot means, this is what this shot means, and this is what this shot means. And I had a little bit of experience with some of that stuff because I had taken a
film course.
Yeah, a film appreciation course in college, and so I had a little bit of that knowledge, and they're similar enough. Like comics are very much a different animal as well, because you got to do your own things. But as far as setting the stage of a panel and setting the stage of a scene, it transitions pretty all right. There are still some differences, but yeah.
All right, cool. Now, how many? So obviously you got it laid out. So how many issues are you looking at? Like, is this like how many issues do you see the series running?
It's gonna be a long one. Like so. The plan, and obviously plans can change, but the plan was that this would be an ongoing series that would amount to around 30 to 50 issues. Okay. And we wouldn't be selling by individual issue. We'd be selling by a collection, right? And so the next book is going to be a full storyline. Initially, I was saying that it was going to be around 150 to 200 pages, but based off of the profits that I had made off of this, and I was tinkering around with it, I'm going to be cutting that down to like 70, 80 pages. And the reason for that is it's just I wanted to up Marcelo's page rate because he deserves it, and as a result, that would put me at a point where the cost of making the book would put me at a point where I would, like, if I hit 30K, I'd be barely breaking even. And like, that's not okay. Like, as much as I love doing this, there is a business side of things.
Right.
And so I want to keep it at a point where we made 7K off of this and we're nearing 8, you know?
Right.
If this book is well received and we build up enough hype and we do a good job of promotion throughout the summer and keep people invested, hitting 10, 15, maybe even 20K is something that's reasonable for the next campaign. Right. We're not really going to be seeing tangible profits until maybe campaign 3, because that's how it works, is that your cost, I'd say around 80% of the funds that I've gotten for this has already been planned to be reinvested into the next book. So that's the whole thing. It's just like, it was this whole deal where I was like, man, I'd love to have this super big graphic novel type thing, but it would put me in, like, I'd literally have, in order for me to do it realistically, I'd have to take out a ridiculously large sum of money from a bank, and I'm not doing that. I want to be able to be comfortably able to put money into this and towards this through what I earn on, you know, the crowdfunding side of things and what I earn in my job. So that way, you know, we can continue to push forward. And we've got a lot of really big names coming in to do stuff for the next book. We've got Scott Rosema is going to be doing a variant cover. Kevin Sharp from the Dragon Guard is going to be doing a variant cover. Ted Lehman is going to be doing a variant cover, and as I said, we have the industry startup cut variant for an aspiring artist, and we have a second guy that that is potentially going to be doing that as well. Where he's a guy that wants to get into the industry. He's a bit older, but like, getting into this industry is difficult. And I want to promote that. That's one of the big core mission statements of Nine Realms Publishing, is to help creators get into the industry and be successful. And that is what our overall long-term goal is that once we get to a point where we are making consistent profits on things and we can throw money at people, we can be like, hey, we will help you do this, that, and the other. We will promote your books. We'll do this. And we'll throw X amount of money at you to help get things started. And then we expect Y percentage in return off of that, off of the profits of your book. Once we get to that point, that's what I want to do. Is we literally set up a Patreon, and one of the big things is, one of the perk tiers is, if you put in like $100 a month, I'll get a panel of indie creators together that I've made friends with, and we'll listen to you pitch an idea for a story. And that's not a guarantee that any of us are going to sign you on, but at the very least, you'll be getting constructive feedback. You'll be allowed to know what you can do to make that pitch tight, and potentially get somebody that already has a name. Or hell, if we're doing well by that point, we might even take a look at you. We might offer you something. And that's something that's very important to me, because again, I decided to do this book because I kept hitting the walls in the main line, because there's so many.
Now, what are the biggest barriers that you were like confronted with?
It's very difficult getting into an industry where, if you don't have your own original IP, people won't even talk to you. If you go up to somebody, like, if you want to talk to someone at DC about a potential idea for a series you have, That's an unsolicited pitch. And don't get me wrong, they have to do that from a legal standpoint. They have to. But it makes things very difficult. And, there used to be a time where Marvel and DC would put out little writing contests in their books. Yeah. And they'd be like, hey, you think that you can be the next Stan Lee? You think you might be able to be the next this, that, the other? Send us your idea for a story. If it wins, we'll bring you in, consult you, and you'll help us make a book. And that used to be a thing that they did. And like George R. Martin actually like legitimately started his writing career, writing like little fictional editorial pieces that were published in the back of Marvel books. And this is how like that was how that creativity was fostered. And that doesn't happen anymore. Like the best you get is fan mail getting put out. And don't get me wrong, like it's great to see that. I know I was thrilled when they published. I wrote in a thing back when Mark Waid was doing his last run on Cap, and the first issue was really good, and then it took a left turn, and we won't go there. But I wrote a whole thing, and it got put into the issue 700. And I was ecstatic, like, and that's great, but that's such a small pittance for what you could be doing. There are a lot of these guys that have fantastic ideas. Don't get me wrong, there are a lot of them that are trash too. Like that's always going to be the case. But you're never going to know what you have out there unless you put the feelers out, unless you listen. And to be frank, that's honestly what they need. A lot of these characters are going through the exact same storylines that they had 20 years ago. What they need is somebody with an outside perspective coming in and having an idea that could change the game. And that's what, that was my whole deal. Is like for a long time, I'd tried to get into these industries, and whenever I'd approach a talent agency to represent me from a writer's standpoint to do a pitch with any of those companies, they'd be like, "Oh, well, you don't own the IP. We're not going to represent you." And then DC has an annual writing competition, but that one, if you don't know, if you didn't know how to write a script or anything like that, you're kind of screwed, because that's the whole thing. Is you need to be able to put that forward. And at the time when I was trying to do that, that wasn't what that wasn't within my skill set, even though it was something I was trying to figure out. And Marvel doesn't even have anything like that anymore. No, they don't. And that was my whole deal. And there are companies that are a little bit more open. I know that the time that I got really close, I wasn't trying to pitch a comic. I was trying to pitch an animated series of The Shadow, and I got a hold of Dynamite because they were the last person that I know had any rights of The Shadow whatsoever outside of the parent company, Condé Nast. Right. And so I reached out to Dynamite, and they listened to me, and they're like, "That's a really cool idea. There are two problems with this. One, we've never had the screen rights for The Shadow, and two, we lost the print rights last year."
Wow, that's rough.
Just went, oh, and they're like, we can't guarantee you anything, but it is a cool idea. Try reaching out to Condé Nast. And Condé Nast is very protective about their properties, and I got the very polite corporate version of "go away." You have very little to offer outside of an idea, and I don't hold that against them. That's their right as an industry, as a company, and the Shadow is one of those really awesome properties that I feel like, in the hands of the right person, the right creative team can be fantastic. But if you give it to somebody who doesn't really care and just wants to make a statement, then it can be really bad.
Oh yeah, of course. Now, working with your artist, now how do you handle? Because here's the thing. I've been doing this for a little while, and then, I've always said that for me, I have written my scripts, and I rarely, if ever, get back what I want. But I'm always surprised and in the end very happy with what I got.
Yeah.
That's my situation. Now, how does that work out for you?
It's a bit of both. So I end up, there are certain things that I write it down and Marcelo brings that shit to life. Literally, like the first 3 or 4, the first 5 pages of Elysian Fields are pretty much like verbatim what my script was describing. Like he hit the nail on the head. Everything was fantastic. And that was that. There was like, I think 1 or 2 things that we came up with like last minute on those pages. Because in fact there was, because I remember I was so excited when I got the first page back that I forgot that Achilles wasn't supposed to be using a sword in those panels. He was using a spear.
Right.
And so we were getting to around page 3. And I was like, oh, awesome. We're getting to this awesome 2-page spread where he charges the Trojan line with a spear. And I go, shit, where's his spear? And so then we created a whole thing where Achilles gets handed his spear after defeating the guy he's fighting in the first few pages, which honestly worked out even better because like I had a buddy that was looking at it because those are our preview pages. And he was like, man, that is such a fantastic edit because it says something about the character, that he's not just the guy with the spear. He's the guy that calls out and somebody freaking brings his spear to him. That adds so much weight to him. And I was like, I didn't even think of that, but yeah, awesome. Great. But then there'll be other times where I'll like write something down and it won't be what I described, but it will be astronomically better. And I think probably the best example of that was I wrote a character outline for how I wanted Gilgamesh to look. And, that outline was very different than what I got. But what impressed me was how dedicated Marcelo was to the authenticity of it. Because in my version, Gilgamesh kind of has like a slender beard that is almost kind of like what Jafar has in Aladdin, where it just kind of comes out a little bit and what have you. And it's very clean. I get his drawing back. And Gilgamesh has like a full-on beard filled with plates, and he looks like a Mesopotamian king that you see on one of the old stelos. And it was very clear that he went out and did thorough and extensive research on the culture, because it just came out, and it was phenomenal. And I was completely blown away. And I was like, yes. I mean, I don't have words. And so there are times where I feel that it comes out exactly how I want it to. And there are times where it's not what I wanted, but it far surpasses what I was hoping for. And I think a lot of that, I think I'm also able to kind of ground my expectations a lot because I draw. And so a lot of times there is an image in my head that I want to get out on paper. And what comes out on paper is nothing like what I had in my head. I still enjoy it. It's still not bad, but it's one of those things where I've kind of gotten to the point where I temper my expectations, because we can have this grandiose thing in our head, but at the end of the day, anything that comes from our mind is going to be different than what we see on the page. And it's the same thing when, you're reading a book and they make a movie out of that book and they start casting people and you're like, I don't like any of those people. But then you go and you watch the movie and you're like, oh, they did a fantastic job. I remember throwing a temper tantrum when Chris Evans got cast as Captain America. I had one of my best friends, I swear, can attest to this. I called him and yelled at him for 4 hours. For 4 hours, I went on how Chris Evans was the worst casting decision for that role possible. Now I don't think that anyone else can play him.
Yeah, that is very true. That dude has become Captain America.
Absolutely.
Yep. So, all right, cool. Now, all right, we're coming close to the end of this, but we're not done yet. So we're gonna. So I got a few more things for you. So, all right. First, let's do this one first. Is anything that you wanted to talk about that I didn't ask you about, or maybe you wanted to let the fans know about?
The only big thing that we're doing that I don't think that we covered was we are donating 25 copies of Elysian Fields to the Walter Reed Special Forces Clinic.
Nice.
My dad, as I said, my dad was Special Forces, and he's the head of his local SF chapter, and so he's linked me up with that. And we do have a Support Our Troops fund that very similarly we're getting set up through that SF chapter with an organization that not only helps veterans and specifically of Special Forces, but their families, helps get their kids scholarships to school and stuff like that. And so $5 of that Support Our Troops perk, and any time that's purchased, $5 will be taken and put towards that fund.
That's awesome. That's really cool. Now, okay, so now, before we continue, one more thing. So let everybody know, where can they find your books? Where can they, support your books, get that Zero issue, so on and so forth?
So the Elysian Fields issue 0 is up on Indiegogo presently. Pretty easy. Look up Elysian Fields on Indiegogo, or hell, if you go into Google and look up Elysian Fields, the comic, it should be the second thing down. The first thing is our Twitter, so you can follow us on there and get instant updates as well. So we're very accessible, and that's where you can get our book, the 0 issue. There are multiple tiers out right now. We have a limited amount of the hollow foils, which was what the campaign was initially launched for. I am having 500 of those printed. Around 340 of them have already been claimed, so there are not many left. So if you want those, get in on it now, because as I said, when I run out of them, they're gone. That was the whole thing, is it's a thank you to the people that got us where we are. And once we run out of them, I will not be printing more. After that, though, we do have a floppy, and we do have a black and white cut. We also have a retailer perk, which does include the 2 of those hollow foils while they are available. And when they become no longer available, we will modify that retailer perk, as well as the Support Our Troops perk, because that one also deals with the hollow foils.
Cool. Also, a lot of that information you're going to be able to see in the show notes. So you'll be able to just go straight to the show notes, click on the link, and go get yourself some Elysian Fields. Now, all right, we get to some fun questions. Ooh. So, all right. So, Michael, if you were given your druthers, whoever you wanted, right, to do a cover for your book, any artist, living, dead, don't worry about the budget, who would you choose?
Just because I love Spawn so freaking much. And his Spider-Man was literally one of the redefining moments of comic art. Todd McFarlane. If I could have any artist, living, breathing, what have you, doing a variant cover of my book, it'd be Todd McFarlane. I would cry. Like if Todd McFarlane showed up into my place, was like, "Hey, I'm going to do a variant of your book. Let's talk." Right. I don't know how. I'd probably just collapse. I don't know how I would handle myself, because he's a very big part of why I got into the industry as well. I remember watching the documentary about him going through his journey from DC to Marvel, and then to creating Image and what have you, and how his art kind of revolutionized things, because at the time people were still kind of drawing in that 60s, 70s, Ditko, Kirby, everything style. And McFarlane was one of those guys people don't look like this anymore. Why is Mary Jane look so plain? Let's give her curly hair, put her in a crop top, some tight jeans, and this, that, the other. And he artists like him really brought that to the forefront. And I would literally just go nuts if he did a cover of my book.
Okay, that's cool. That's very reasonable. Now, the next question. If you were given a choice of writing any character for any company, it doesn't matter, Marvel, DC, any of them, right? And what would be the character or team that you would choose, and who would draw it for you?
That's So there's a tie for that one, and they're both very easy for me. Well, one of them is very easy for me. The Shadow is my number one. I fucking love pulp heroes. They don't get enough love, and the Shadow is my favorite. And literally, I'd probably get either Alex Ross or Brett Wagner, because they've already they draw the Shadow and they do it freaking well. Like Alex Ross, I don't need to say anything about, but Brett Wagner did all the art for Shadow Year One, and I think The Death of Margot Lane as well, and he's phenomenal. I literally have one of his hand drawn variants from Shadow Year One of him. It's like it's kind of like a minimalist piece, and he's got the Shadow with his hand stretched out with puppet strings dangling with crooks on them, and I was like, that's so fucking cool. But so probably them for that, and the other one would be Thomas Wayne Batman. I love me some Flashpoint Batman, and I literally had a whole idea on doing a mini series that went into like why Thomas chose the Bat, and having a focus on his crusade and how it differed to Bruce's approach, and how they have this, whilst both obviously coming to the same thing, having this very different reasons for doing it. And for that one, that's tough, because like, actually, no. I would want Jorge Jimenez. Man is one of the coolest upstart artists that DC has put out in a few years. Super talented, really great art. I like the fact that he has a combination of Western and manga style artwork. It looks gorgeous. The big thing that would make the difference on that would be the inker and the colorist, because you'd want some, like, most of the stuff that I've seen Jimenez do is much more brighter in its color tone than like dark, like with Thomas Wayne Flashpoint Batman. It's got to be very dark. I would almost go like a Sin City style color palette.
Okay, very limited. That's cool. All right, so I got a few comparatives that I like to ask. So know, these are like little weirdo questions. So I'll softball you. Captain America or Batman?
Cap.
Okay. Why?
Do you notice the hat I'm wearing?
Well, no. I mean, that's obvious, sure. But I mean, but why do you choose? Like, why would you pick him?
Like, are you talking in like a fight or?
No.
Okay, so the big thing that I think, if we're going just based off of why Cap is my favorite character versus Batman. Batman is an interesting character with a lot of psychology, but he's very static.
Yeah.
And that's not to say that Steve isn't a bit static in his own way, but I think that there's more that you can get out of Captain America than you can out of Batman. At the end of the day, Batman is and will always be one thing. He's a totalitarian psychopath that has his foot down on his city. The best things that Batman has ever done, the best accomplishments that he's ever made, are the heroes that he has inspired that are better heroes than he is. That is the core thing for Batman. Cap is there's a quote by Jim Steranko that I feel that every single time I talk about Cap that I bring up is, behind the mask he was one of us. Captain America, Steve Rogers, is an embodiment of the American ideal. And I know that there are a lot of people that are going to shake their heads and go this, that, the other about the country's history. That's not the point. Right. The point is Steve is a representation of the principles that we should live up to, the principles that make the country good. I'm not here to debate the moralistic nature of the history, but that's what Steve is. And Steve represented that Steve is that representation in the minds of Jewish immigrants who came over here that were running away from persecution, to all of those who came here and were leaving that past world behind for a chance at a better life. That's what Steve is. And so what's really interesting about him is to see him to see that come in conflict when he comes out of that he becomes that man out of time, because the world that we live in is far more gray. And so you have this original idea that people can see as antiquated, that people can see as dated, and it's constantly being put in flux with the way that the world is now. But he doesn't back down. He like everyone's seen it. You have the phenomenal speech that he gives to Peter Parker in Civil War, which is one of the best written moments of Captain America and that entire mess of a story. And where he's talking about, reading Mark Twain, and Mark Twain's quote about, when the mob and the press and the government tell you to change your opinions, to steer away from the tree of truth, you stand firm and tell them, no, you move. And that's the thing with Cap, is that no matter what, you're going to get somebody that's not on the side of anybody except for the people. He's always there for the people, and it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Batman is not there for the people. Batman is there to bring fear. That is the sole purpose of Batman. Batman is a child that saw his parents gunned down in an alley, and he hasn't aged past that. That's all he can think about all day, every day.
No, that's awesome. I like that. Godzilla or Gamera?
I'm going to have to go with Godzilla just because I know more about Godzilla. And that's not to say that I know a whole hell of a lot. I liked watching the movies with my brothers growing up, but that's about the extent of my knowledge of Godzilla.
Okay. Kirby or Ditko?
That's rough. I'm gonna have to go Kirby. It's really tough. I think that Ditko is definitely and I don't think that anyone could argue this, a better artist from a composition standpoint. Is that his characters were more anatomically correct and what have you, but Kirby had a way with making a panel dynamic. Oh, yeah. And while his stuff was very cartoonish and what have you, he had the advantage of, he served in the military. He saw people fight. And so his action sets were brilliant. And then you add into the point that he had the creativity on par with Stan Lee and would create all sorts of craziness. I went back and I was reading his New Gods run a while ago, and I was expecting, a lot of stuff from that era of comics hasn't really aged well. Like, they're really good stories, but like you have some really stilted dialogue and this, that, the other. It reads so smooth. No, I was blown away. Like, seriously, I was like, I read New Gods #1, and I was like, man, if this was released today as like a brand new book, it'd still be a hit.
Have you seen the documentary Kirby at War?
I have not. That's on my list. It's been recommended to me a lot, and it's on there. Yeah,
if you have Amazon Prime, it's free on there.
Oh, that's happening within the next day or so.
Yeah, that's what I saw. I caught it recently. It was really good. I enjoyed it immensely. Byrne or Perez?
George Perez or who?
George Perez or John Byrne?
I don't know if I've seen enough of John Byrne's work to make that judgment. Like, I've seen a lot of George Perez because I'm a huge Superman fan, and so I can say that I like George Perez a lot. But without Googling John Byrne to see what his artwork is, like, and that's a poor reflection on me, I realize.
No, that's fair, man.
But like, and there's probably a very good chance that I've seen his art, and when I see it, I'm like, ooh, this guy's great. But like I didn't get into the point where like I was knowing creators' names and stuff like that until the last 5 years or so. So I'm still relatively new.
Okay, no, that's cool. If you've ever read the Phoenix Saga,
yes,
from the X-Men,
yes,
that's John Byrne.
Okay, Yeah, he's fantastic.
Yeah,
I'd probably still go with George Perez, though.
Yeah, that's fine. That's fair.
Like Phoenix Saga's got great work in it, but George Perez drawing Superman is a special combination, and that's all that needs to be said on that.
No, that's fine. Lord of the Rings or Star Wars?
Oh, you are the worst. You know what? I love Star Wars, I do, but you cannot compete. Like, Lucas can't compete with Tolkien. I'm sorry. Like, I love Star Wars. It's a blast. I was literally binge playing the new Battlefront 2. I know that it was terrible when it came out, but now it's fantastic because EA got in all the trouble, and so they had to make it a good game. But Lord of the Rings, man, I can't watch Star Wars every day. I can, if you tell me, hey, Lord of the Rings Fellowship of the Ring is on, I will not only watch Fellowship of the Ring, I will start watching the other movies.
Gotcha.
And the books were like, I mean, obviously the books are fantastic. George Tolkien, J.R.R. Tolkien, not George. George. That just shows how long of a day I've had. J.R.R. Tolkien literally created a whole world. He created languages. He created mythology. There's so much stuff that Tolkien did in his lifetime that wasn't published that they're still coming out with new freaking books.
Oh, yeah.
Like it's not even a fair contest.
Okay, cool, fair enough. Now, these two, I don't know if you know them, but I'm gonna do a couple more of these and then we'll wrap it up. But Sandman or Swamp Thing, and when I say Swamp Thing, I mean Alan Moore's run on Swamp Thing. I don't know how familiar you are with it.
So Alan Moore's run on Swamp Thing's really good. I'd still have to go Sandman though. Neil Gaiman did something real special there, and that's not to take away from anything that Alan Moore did with his book. Even though I'm not the biggest Alan Moore fan because of his public stances on things, but like, guy's a hell of a writer. He's written some of my favorite books. But I would have to say that Neil Gaiman's Sandman takes the cake on that one.
Gotcha. Now, here's one. I don't know how familiar you are with these. This will be the last one. Hercules or Xena?
Xena, dude. It's not like they're set in the same universe, so they both got like kind of the same corny writing. The big advantage is you got Lucy Lawless in that corset kicking ass. That's not even a cut. Like, oh, cool. Got Kevin Sorbo. Cool, I guess. Not really the physique I'd pick for a Hercules type, but I mean, whatever. But then you've got Xena, and it's just like, well, she's hot. So, and she's got that weird disc thing that, like Captain America's shield, breaks every rule of physics.
Right.
Throws that thing around.
Gotcha. Michael, we're at an end. This was awesome. So let everybody know, where can they find your stuff? Where can they, one more time, let everybody know.
So we've got our Twitter, which is at Elysian Fields _0. We've got our Indiegogo, which, as I said, super easy look up, Elysian Fields. Nine Realms Publishing does have a Facebook page. So just look up Nine Realms Publishing LLC up on Facebook. It should come up. We're growing pretty big, which is really exciting. And yeah, we hope to see you guys. And when you guys get your copy of Elysian Fields, be paying attention to your email, because I've been sending a thank you email with a complimentary secret perk to every single backer. I've made that a personal mission of mine. I've kept up with it even when we had the massive jump in our last few hours of sales. I kept up with, I think, 60 some odd contributions. Wow. So I'm here for you guys. You are the reason why we're making books, and I will never betray that.
Awesome. Thank you so much, guys. Go get yourself some Elysian Fields, and I'll be talking to you soon. Go check out the show notes, because that's where you can see these links. So thank you so much. Have a great night. Mike, it was awesome talking to you. And guys, I'll see you soon.